Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from, without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is 2021's Demon Turf, the adventure of a tiny demon with a big attitude who's toppling the turf leaders of the demon world in the hopes of becoming the Demon Queen.
Following that is the narrative adventure of a human and his 4 alien scoundrel friends that just need to pay a fine, but end up getting mixed up in an intergalactic battle for faith energy. 2021's Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. What could a theme for these two games be? I guess taunted by dreams and shooting fire from fists. There's kind of a roundabout explanation for each of those, but I think it works.
Yeah, it could also, like, Rocket and Beebs aren't exactly the same type of attitude, but they're both small things with attitude.
Yeah, that's true, I suppose. It's our first episode after episode 200, where we celebrated the best of 2010s. Thanks again for all of your help out there listening and voting on those surveys and creating quite the top 10 list. That was a fun one to pull together, but now we're back with our regularly scheduled 2-game discussion.
And boy, are they 2 games. Episode 200, I think, turned out real well. We haven't recorded in like 2 weeks, and hopefully I still remember how to do it.
Let's shake the rust off. Joe, how you doing? What are you playing?
So over the break, 3 games happened. I finished Persona 5 Royal. Boy howdy, there's no game I hate finishing more than a Persona game. Because, boy, that is a lonely, lonely feeling when those credits roll. The third semester, I think, would have worked better as a standalone The Answer style DLC that was twice as long. Yeah. So it could actually explore some of the things that it brings up and not just tell you they're happening and then they're not happening 10 minutes later. So that's that. I did like the final boss, though. That was good. And then Matt and I finished It Takes Two.
Oh, nice.
By the time this is out, the review should be out as well. Don't buy it on the Switch. just don't. It's a fun game, but it's way too damn long. It's like 11 to 12 hours long for a co-op required 3D platformer. That's too much. It's too much. And then Pokemon Scarlet and Violet came out. And I have finished all of the campaign in Pokemon Violet, and I'm like 20 Pokemon away from finishing the Pokedex in Pokemon Violet.
Wow.
So that game is really good, but also needed another year in development and is broken, and it's actually kind of unacceptable that it released in the state that it is currently in, and it still hasn't been patched. Woo!
Game Freak should not have been pressed to put out 2 big open world games in 1 year. That's crazy, and it's showing when they don't have their anime plans all lined up. We don't know what the anime plans are. It needed another year for sure. But I likewise have also been playing Pokemon Violet. Nowhere near as far as you, but I've got my team up to level 69. Nice. And I've beaten Starfall and I've beaten Legends. We're just waiting for that, ready to go to Victory Road. And then whatever comes after in the Great Crater.
I hope that you don't get the bug that 2 people we know have gotten at the Elite Four, where also I'm going to rip this Band-Aid off right now. There's no Victory Road. Not before the Elite Four, at least. There's an equivalent, but it's after. Weirdly enough. But there's a bug in the Elite Four where the song will glitch out and only play the first 10 seconds on loop.
Ooh.
Forever. Which sucks because this game has a really good soundtrack, and the Elite Four battle theme is actually one of my favorites in the game, so...
Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed on that one. Speaking of another really good soundtrack this year, also beat God of War Ragnarok. That was an experience. Wow, I can't believe... I think they made a better game than the first one. What it lacks for in the simplicity of the plot and the intimacy between, a father and son, that was definitely a powerful part of the 2018 game. But when you're talking about a big world-ending event like Ragnarok and going to all of the 9 realms and all that it does with the characters and still maintaining the single camera shot, the single shot of how it just keeps going, and it's really great, and Bear McCreary did an amazing job, and I would say expect to see that one in our top 10. Oh, because we got to start preparing for that one. That's a month away.
It sure is. Oh boy, there's 4 episodes between now and then? Oh boy.
Not even, I don't think. It's crazy. Anyway, I don't think anything's going to top God of War Ragnarok as my game of the year. That was very, very impressive.
I don't think I've been thinking about it, and I'm not sure I have a slam dunk game of the year this year. Arceus might be the closest, and that's a little bit sad.
It's interesting to think between the 2 Pokemon games, and yeah, I might prefer Arceus a little more.
But I haven't played Signalis yet, which people tell me is super up my alley. So maybe it'll be that. I don't know.
No real follow-up news this week. Let's get right into talking about some games. Joe, let's hear about some weird 3D, 2D shifting energy.
Yeah, let's talk about Demon Turf. So, Demon Turf was originally released on November 4th, 2021 for PC, Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S. One day we'll be out of the era where all of those have to be listed. One day. It was developed by Fabraz, I don't know how to pronounce it, I'm so sorry. And published by Playtonic, which you can actually, in one of the areas, find Yuka and Laylee just standing outside somewhere.
That's cute.
It's cute. So, what is Demon Turf? Well, Demon Turf is a level-based 3D platformer where the player takes control of a small 1,000-year-old demon girl with attitude named Beebs. Beebs has a very powerful aspiration, and that's to dethrone the Demon King and take her rightful place as the Demon Queen. And of course, whenever she brings this up to the people around her, their response is usually, "Sure you will, honey." And one night, the Demon King taunts her in her dreams, and she decides that it's time to make this aspiration a reality. But first, she must collect batteries in order to get into the king's castle, and those batteries are scattered amongst the other 4 turfs run by other demons: the Apoca Desert, Armageddon, New Neo City, and the Peak Plateau. And once she has dethroned all of the turf leaders and taken their batteries, it's time to take the fight to the king. And it plays pretty much exactly like you would expect of a 3D platformer. You jump, you dive, you double jump. They've got a super jump that you can do that's actually quite satisfying. You can hover, wall jump, etc. You can do all that stuff. And it's relatively tight feeling, I'll be real. Surprisingly so. Beebs also has combat capabilities. She can shoot fists of fire out of her fists. And instead of hurting enemies though, this just pushes them. So when you get hit by an enemy's attack, with some exceptions, you don't die, you're just pushed backwards. And the way you kill enemies is you either push them off of the level or you push them into spikes and they die, or lasers or something of that type. And that's basically how the combat works. And she can charge her attack to make it a giant hand of fire instead of just small little fireballs. It's interesting. It's the weakest part of the game. She'll also gain new turf powers as she goes on, such as a grappling hook, the ability to glide, or the ability to turn into a snake wheel, which is my favorite personally. Demon Turf is, as Peter alluded to earlier, most notable for its art style, in which every character in the 3D world is represented by a 2D sprite, aside from like 2 or 3 exceptions. And it's also notable that levels in Demon Turf do not have checkpoints. But Beebs can actually put down a limited amount of checkpoints per level. So you choose where the checkpoints go, and I believe it's 2, and you can buy like accessories that increase that. But you get to put down the checkpoints. It's a weird mechanic in that you kind of just have to hope, oh man, I hope I'm pretty far into the level. Though I think the intended use is, hey, that part sucked and I don't want to do it anymore. Or that part was really hard and I don't want to do it again. I'm going to place a checkpoint right after it and never touch it again. Which is an interesting way of doing checkpoints, I guess. Alongside Midgie the Kappa and sorta alongside fellow demon Luce, can Beebs conquer the turfs of the demon world and take this fight to the king? And can she beat him when she gets there? Of course she can, she's Beebs. So this is where I will ask, Peter, what are your experiences with Demon Turf?
Let's see. I remember you bringing up this game for conversation for Best of 2021. And I remember looking up footage of it and just, the art style is very striking. The disparity between the 2D sprite characters and the 3-dimensional world. It's a little jarring at first glance, though. From when I talked to you about the game, I remember you saying that like you get used to it pretty quickly and it's pretty charming.
Yeah, for the most part. I think it was first shown off at a PlayStation State of Play, if I remember correctly. Or it might have been like an IGN thing the year there was no E3 because the pandemic. I don't remember exactly, but I do remember seeing it on a live stream of some sort, and then I forgot about it until it came out. I actually hadn't played it when we got to Best of 2021. It ended up being an honorable mention. For that reason, I am mistaken on that because it should have been an honorable mention because the soundtrack is fantastic. At the very least, it should have been an honorable mention. It was one of the first games I played this year. And yeah, it's fun. I'm not going to say like it's one of the best 3D platformers I've ever played. It's got its problems. But like it's got a lot of personality to it. And it's fun enough that I finished it. So there's that.
That's really interesting that you mentioned that it should have been upgraded. As I was going through my game, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, and reading more about it, I was like, oh, this probably should have been in the top 10 in some capacity. And hey, these are both 2021 games that released like within a week of each other-ish.
Oh, they did, didn't they? Damn. So Demon Turf was originally conceived as a 2.5D platformer, apparently. And they wanted it to serve as a follow-up to Fabreza's previous title, which was a 2D platformer called Slime-san. They kind of felt like they had done all they wanted to do when it came to 2D platformers. Like they'd exhausted their enthusiasm for that specific type, but they still wanted to work on platformers in general. They felt there was still more they could do there, so hence 2.5D. And then eventually that just morphed entirely into 3D. And apparently the transition from 2D to 3D was surprisingly smooth. The way they described it was, like we had this really weird thing where we'd try to put in a new mechanic and then it would just work, which I don't believe you at all. You lie. But yeah, the only real challenge that they talked about was they had some issues figuring out the combination of 2D art and 3D environments, specifically in making sure that characters were facing the right way. Because you can rotate around Beebs and it'll actually like rotate her sprite as if she is a 3D object. Mm-hmm. It's a little weird, but it's neat, I think. And when it came to the combat, they wanted to make it more physics-based and about pushing the enemies instead of just killing them, because they kind of didn't want to do the usual health bar stuff. They wanted just to have something unique for their game. And once you've beaten the boss of a turf, you can actually redo every level in the game, except it will be remixed to the point where some of them are sometimes essentially entirely new levels. So that essentially doubles the amount of levels in the game. Every level is actually 2 levels. It's really neat, and I completely forgot about that until I watched the interview that I got some of this information from. So in the lead up to Demon Turf's launch, Fabraz released Demon Turf Trials, which not only contained the first 3 levels of the game, but also featured a trial mode where players competed for the best times. And every week, the player with the fastest time would get a portrait of themselves, a pet, or a family member placed in the final game somewhere. And Demon Turf reviewed overall okay. It's got a 76 on Switch for Metacritic, 75 on PlayStation and Xbox. The PC version got a little less of a warm welcome. It has a 68. There was a lot of praise given to the game's art style that really, really sets it apart. And just sort of the aesthetic of the game is just super strong. But the main thing that was criticized was the combat mechanics. They were seen as the low point. A friend of the show, John Reardon, over at Nintendo World Report, actually did the review for Demon Turf and worded it as the combat feels less integrated into the game than the game's other mechanics. Like, it kind of doesn't feel like it fits. Which they kind of took to heart, actually, because in April of this year, April 14th, 2022, they actually released a mini-sequel called Demon Turf Neon Splash, and there is no combat in it. It is all platforming. And they cited the reason that they wanted to focus on what worked, and instead of what didn't. They wanted to take out what people just sort of felt wasn't working. Which, I mean, good on them for doing that. I think, I don't think the combat is that bad, but it is definitely like one of those things where you're doing it and you're like, I would like to get back to the platforming now. That's the fun part. It's average, I guess. So we're going to talk about one of the composers, one of the 2 composers on this game, and his name is M.R. Miller. I don't actually have a lot of information on him, unfortunately, because I found his Twitter. I actually found his Twitter because he tweeted at us when we were tweeting out the honorable mentions last year.
Oh, that's right.
He tweeted to thank us for mentioning them. So I scrolled through so many mentions to get to that and find his Twitter again. That Twitter is at Michael R. M. Miller. And he is a composer and a coder, and he currently works as a senior audio programmer at Naughty Dog. And he also seems to work very closely with Austin Wintory a lot. The main 2 games that he has done the lead composing for are, of course, Demon Turf and the game Evergate, which I believe also came out last year, I think. I haven't played it, but I'm aware of what Evergate is. But he is also credited as a MIDI transcriber on Abzu, Pode, Erica, The Bradwell Conspiracy, and more, which are all soundtracks that were composed by Austin Wintory. And he also is credited with MIDI transcription for the recent Traveler, A Journey Symphony. So he's very, very close with Mr. Wintory and his work. The other composer on the game goes by the name Fat Bard, which that's a pretty good name, honestly. And Miller kind of handled the boss themes and the hub themes, while Fat Bard handled the stage music for the most part. And when I was looking at it on VGMDB, one of the tracks, called Grapes and Red Swine, features an alto flute performance by the one and only Kristen Nigas.
Oh, that's really neat.
So there she is again, I think for probably the 3rd week in a row. So, I think this game has a fantastic soundtrack. Like, just very, very good. let's get into the 5 critical tracks so we can hear what that sounds like. And we're going to start with the one with my favorite name. This is critical track number 1. Let's Get Forked Up. This song was composed by M.R. Miller, and apparently those vocals are also M.R. Miller, which surprised the hell out of me. This music is for the main hub of Forktown, essentially Beebs' home turf, which is the hub that goes into the other hubs for all the other levels, and where the Demon King's castle is located. Every single turf has its own sort of rendition of this theme, with different words, like the one for the Apoca Desert, because it has like a pig theme. A lot of the people there are pigs. It's Let's Get Porked Up, which is kind of an unfortunate name, but I assume that's on purpose. Or like Let's Catch Some Waves in the Armageddon and stuff like that. But this is my favorite version of it. I think the original version is the best one. It's got sort of that attitude that Demon Turf is trying to bring across, especially when you have, like, in the clip you can hear Beebs just sort of, I think it's supposed to be Beebs, just sort of rapping nonsense words, and at one point gunshots are heard. It's really funny.
Yeah, is this what mumble rapping is?
I guess, maybe. Mumble rapping by Alvin and the Chipmunks. I love this song. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it has just the right feeling for Demon Turf in general, and that name is so good.
It really is. Yeah, and I never would have guessed that's M.R. Miller on the vocals, but pitch shift is an amazing thing. What a neat little funk to this. I dig it.
Critical track number 2. Speaking of funk, you want funk? Let's get into one of the stage songs, my personal favorite stage song, an early one, too. This is Pig Disco. As I mentioned earlier, Fat Bard handled the stage music, and so this song is by him. It's one of the level themes in the Apoca Desert, which, of course, like I said, has a pig theme to it. The boss is a giant pig man, and the demons that live there are pig people. It's pretty obvious why it's called that. And I just really like this song because it's got a really good groove to it. And it's the one that, even after finishing the game, like, this is the one that I'd find myself humming or whistling. It's just very catchy and a lot of fun, and I dig this a lot.
It sure is. Yeah, I think going into this, I did not expect this kind of sound for Demon Turf. I'm trying to remember what song we brought up for honorable mentions.
It was Let's Get Forked Up.
Oh, okay. That would make sense. Time is weird, and you don't remember what you say on podcasts, unfortunately.
Yep. It is all erased the instant you're done.
So, yeah, to hear this kind of continued in this way is pretty cool.
But you want to get something completely different after that. Let's get into some boss themes. The next 3 are all boss themes because I think those are the most memorable parts of the game. And the music there is where some of my favorite music lives. And the first one is critical track number 3. This is Damp's Sea Dog Shanty.
Now you've done it, Snap. I caught me way to the top. This turf is mine, get off me block!
So all of the boss themes, minus one of them, feature vocals. And they're all really, really good. This one specifically was composed by M.R. Miller, and the vocals are once again by M.R. Miller, as well as Susan Crescelius. I'm hoping that is how that is pronounced. This is the boss battle against Captain Damp. He is the second boss in the game, the turf leader of the Armadageddon. He's a giant hermit crab that is singing along with his pirate crew, and it's a lot of fun. And this is where I can bring up my favorite part about the boss themes, being that they kind of happen in 3 acts, being it takes usually 3 cycles of whatever you have to do to beat them. And the first stage is always like, haha, look at this dumb, tiny little person that thinks they can beat me. This is funny. And the second stage is, okay, so maybe I have to take this a little more seriously. And the third stage is, oh no, I'm losing. And it's fun because the music works super well in that way. The part that you hear in the clip is the second stage for Captain Damp. But it's a really fun little pirate shanty that I've always really dug, and it's one of my favorite songs in the game.
Yeah, I'm here for this. It's always cool when boss battles have vocals. Big Oogie Boogie energy.
Ooh, that's a good comparison.
From Nightmare Before Christmas. I mean, again, playing more with, pitch and distortion on the voice, but that's definitely the vibe I got.
When the third act starts, which is one of my favorites, but I couldn't include it because there are no vocals in the third act. So it wouldn't have been a good idea to make that be the clip. But he just has this point where there's 2 guitar chords. That's it! You're done! And then there's no vocals after that. And the way it's delivered is a lot of fun. And I really, really dig the whole song in general. But I mentioned there is one boss theme with no vocals, and that is actually critical track number 4. This is Tomoe and Gozen's Flight. Once again, like all the other boss themes, this was composed by M.R. Miller, and this is the boss battle against the characters Tomoe and Gozen, who are the turf leaders of New Neo City. There are 2 giant owls that you have to use your brand new gliding powers to fight. It's probably my favorite boss in the game to fight, and this music is a big part of why. This is probably my second favorite song in the game, which is odd because it, like I said, it stands out among the boss themes. It's the only one with no vocals whatsoever, and I don't know why, but it's a really interesting change of pace, and I just think that the main melody is catchy as all hell, and so I really, really like this song.
It really is. I think it's a good indication when, maybe you, listener at home, caught yourself bopping your head to this, and I think that's a good feeling. You can only imagine how it gets integrated in the game to amplify the experience. This one's very different, but also just dripping in cool.
But my favorite track in the entire game. So there are actually going to be 2 clips for this. I know I don't do this ever, but I think that this song, critical track number 5, illustrates the act thing that I was talking about better than any other song in the entire game. So the song is called The King's Magnum Opus. It was composed by M.R. Miller, vocals by M.R. Miller and Susan Crescelius, music for the final boss battle against the Demon King himself. So as usual, it comes in 3 acts. And the first, we're not really going to talk about because first stage of the boss is he's just making shadow clones of the previous bosses. And so that part of the song is very good. it's a mashup of all 4 boss battle themes that works super well. But acts 2 and 3 are really what I want to get into. So the second act is when the Demon King comes down to fight you himself. And here is a clip from that act. So this part has like these heavy synths to it. It's got these very sort of sinister sounds to it. There's the title screen theme, like all the vocals are from the title screen theme. And I believe it's supposed to be the Demon King taunting Beebs in song, which is neat and good. And also like the music in the background and like the main melodies and stuff are the same that you get in the final level, which is a big gauntlet to get up to the Demon King in the first place. So I really like that. It's got this air of the Demon King is finally down and he's fighting you himself and he believes he has the upper hand. But my favorite part of the song is in Act 3, which here's a clip of that now. This stage is all Beebs. You are winning. Beebs is beating the Demon King, and now she is the one doing the taunting. And I can't listen to this part of the song without getting super hyped. The final boss of this game is fine. Is kind of underwhelming, honestly, if I'm being real. But this song just elevates it so hard. And I absolutely adore the way this song is formatted, and that third act, every time it hits that, it's just like, yeah, we're doing it! It's so good.
It's a really cool structure to how you set up a boss fight and make the music distinct and all that to represent the progress through it. For this one, okay, I get it. Someone played Splatoon and loved how that sounded, because that's definitely what I'm getting from this. But yeah, it's neat to kind of hear it get amped up for that victory lap almost in a way. We're doing it feeling it's a special one.
Just hearing a whole crowd shout, "Let's fork him up" is great. It's a lot of fun. And to have it like build back into "Let's get forked up," which I believe is kind of supposed to be Beebs' theme, essentially. It just works super well. 4 tracks on the cutting room floor. I got 2. The first is another boss theme, and this is Fredo's Fearful Fit. Was again composed by M.R. Miller with vocals by M.R. Miller. This is the boss battle against Fredo. He is the first boss in the game, the turf leader of the Apaka Desert, a big pig man. And I like this song because it's kind of savage towards him. Singing the words, "Little piggy is lunch meat, little piggy is ham," to a pig man seems like a bit much. But I really, really like the attitude that comes through in this song. It's a little bit different from the other tracks with vocals, the boss tracks, because usually they're the boss singing. and taunting Beebs, but this one is just 100% Beebs making fun of this giant pig man, and I'm here for it. I love it. It's great.
Also, shouts out to Mother Goose for lending the inspiration with this little piggy.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the miles Tales per Hour things, of course, but did you ever realize that this little piggy went to market meant that the pigs weren't actually doing shopping?
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, they just went to the meat market.
They are the product. They are lunch meat. They are ham.
Mm-hmm.
Frito. He's my least... Actually, no, he's not my least favorite boss now that I think about it. He's my second least favorite boss. But he's still fine, I guess. And my other track on the cutting room floor, this is Neo Owls. This one is a stage song. It was composed by Fat Bard. And this is one of the stage themes for New Neo City. And honestly, I just kind of dig this song because it's got, again, like you compare it to Pig Disco, and it has sort of a similar groove to it, but it has a completely different feeling, which it should. One is a desert level, and the other is like a city at nighttime. So I think this captures that change in scenery very, very well, and this one catches my attention whenever I hear it.
Got a good synth bounce to it. I don't want him stepping on T-Lopes' turf, but I could totally see this in like a retro 2D Sonic stage.
Yeah, I could see that. So what will I never forget about Demon Turf? It's basically the music. I have been listening to the soundtrack all year. Mostly the songs that I talked about today, but just in general, been listening to the Demon Turf soundtrack all year. It is probably second only to the Persona 5 soundtrack for how much I have listened to it, or the Persona 5 Strikers soundtrack in particular.
That's really surprising. I would not have guessed it would be that high.
Yeah, I really like some of these songs a lot. But it's also just like the general feeling of the game's aesthetics. It's really unique. It's not like, I don't think it's a game I'm going to forget anytime soon. I'm not going to say like, oh, it's among my favorites now, but it is unique enough that it's probably going to stick in my memory. And I think it is a neat game that if you like 3D platformers, honestly, you should give it a shot. It's a lot of fun, I think. So, for our transition, we like to usually do a fan remix or a fan cover. Would you believe there aren't any of those on YouTube? I unfortunately would, which again, I say this every time this happens. Hey, remixers, get on it. Get on it. You're leaving music on the table here. So I mentioned one of the other hub songs earlier in the episode, and we're just going to go ahead and play that. So this is Let's Get Porked Up, and we'll be right back.
You are haunted by dreams with the promise, and you shoot plasma fire out of your guns, which are basically like extensions of your fists. It all works out for Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Yes, this is the recent narrative adventure, not the Telltale's Guardians of the Galaxy that came out a few years ago. But this is the Eidos Montreal game. And Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy was released worldwide on October 26th, 2021 for PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, PC, and Nintendo Switch. But that version is a cloud version, so wouldn't Really recommend that one. It is currently on Xbox Game Pass, though, if you're interested in giving this one a shot, which I do recommend. I was really happy playing through this one on a rental. The game is developed by Eidos Montreal, with D3T working on the PC port, and it is published by Square Enix's European subsidiary. Of course, this was all, last year, about the same time this year. That was all swallowed up by Embracer Group. Nom nom nom.
Yay! Another step towards monopolies. Woo!
Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is a third-person action-adventure game where you assume the role of Peter Quill in his leadership of Marvel's band of misfits. Throughout the story, you'll explore environments for components and collectibles, solve puzzles to continue navigational progression, talk to characters, and make decisions that may or may not affect the game's narrative. It is surprisingly Telltale-like in that regard. When combat happens, you get to shoot elementally charged guns at the enemies, while directing your teammates to use a variety of attacks that are on cooldown timers. Groot has excellent crowd control abilities, in which he can use his roots to immobilize enemies, while Rocket Raccoon can deploy various explosives and bombs. Drax can easily stagger enemies, while Gamora can use her sword to deal powerful damage against a single opponent. When I played the game, I thought it was an interesting combination of Naughty Dog navigation, Telltale story, and BioWare combat, with the frequent freezing and commanding of your colleagues to use different abilities. So, the story of Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Many years after he was kidnapped from Earth at 13 years old, Peter Quill becomes a mercenary named Star-Lord and leads the Guardians of the Galaxy. In order to make money, the Guardians head into the forbidden Quarantine Zone, which was established by the Nova Corps to store debris from the massive intergalactic war that just ended several years ago. And the Guardians enter this space so that the team can capture a rare monster for their patron, Lady Hellbender. However, they are forced to flee the quarantine zone when Peter picks up a gem that he finds and accidentally releases an unidentified alien entity. The Guardians flee, but are intercepted by the Nova Corps patrol ship Hala's Hope, captained by Centurion Ko-Rel, Peter's former lover. Ko-Rel detains the Guardians alongside Grand Unifier Raker of the Universal Church of Truth, who was also caught trespassing in the quarantine zone to search for his church's golden god. While being processed, Peter happens to meet a young Nova Corps cadet named Nikki Gold, who happens to be Ko-Rel's daughter, leading Peter to suspect that he might be Nikki's father. Ko-Rel agrees to give the Guardians 3 cycles to pay their hefty fine. Things take a nasty turn, though, once the Guardians encounter brainwashed Nova Corps members that want to spread the promise. So here are the big questions. What is the promise, and what does it have to do with the gem that unleashed an alien entity? Who is behind the use of the promise to siphon limitless faith energy? And will the Guardians of the Galaxy be able to pay their fine? Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy?
Basically none. The only thing I remember was that a lot of people were sort of writing this game off when it came out for 2 reasons. One, Avengers was a disaster, and that came out, like a year before this?
Yeah, it was in September of 2020.
Yeah, it was, and that game crashed and burned, and I cannot believe it's getting content still. Winter Soldier is getting added this month.
They're trying.
They're trying real hard. But also, every time they showed this game off at a show, they showed the most boring possible parts they could have showed. And just every time they showed it off, the game looked really boring. And then when it came out, like, obviously a bunch of people said, like, oh, wait, no, this game's actually pretty good. But also I remember hearing about the streamer mode and how sometimes you'll get a scene that's just silence, which is something that Square seems to do all the time. And something I had experienced with Life is Strange True Colors before that, too. So those are hilarious. I love them.
Yeah, they negotiate rights for use in the game, but not necessarily beyond when people are broadcasting the game. So, like I said, I played Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy on a rental, finished it, really enjoyed it. I think, the combat's okay. I think it helps a lot, especially as you get to be an adult playing games, that the amount of variation that you can do for the difficulty settings, all of the things that you can tweak is fantastic. Like, you can toggle the degree of damage that you deal, and then a separate for how much damage you take. And there's a really nice amount of accessibility toggles and features that way that I think that helps make the game easier, because I've heard that on other difficulties the enemies can be big bullet sponges, and you really need to really know your abilities of your teammates and make good use of that. And I just want it to be something to get to the next story moment. I liked the navigation using those puzzles and your teammates for that. Finding the different bits of loot throughout the world. I like that. So yeah, I think the combat's the weakest part of it, but it's definitely helps.
There's another theme.
Yeah, there you go. Right. But at least, the different things that you can toggle and tweak and change really help with that. But the story is surprisingly really good. And I think the performances that you get from the different actors playing the Guardians and the other supporting roles really make it an engaging story and a neat contribution in the Marvel games lineup. And something that we can definitely talk about as I kind of delve into the development history. But you'd have a hard time, living up to what the MCU has set up, and for it to keep pace with and maybe surpass in terms of performance. It's really surprising for what people have, in their minds as established characters.
And especially for the Guardians of the Galaxy, because the average person that didn't read comics didn't know who the hell they were before those movies came out.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like Spider-Man where everybody knows who Spider-Man is. Like, that's the version people know.
And the only one, right? As opposed to, like, who is your Spider-Man? So I think it's really interesting in that regard. So this whole development story comes off of what happens after Eidos Montreal finishes their work on the game that they had worked on previously, and that was 2016's Deus Ex Mankind Divided. And that kind of closed the book on their Deus Ex franchise reboot. Deus Ex's roots can be felt throughout this game, actually, as not only did it serve as a major inspiration for the game's campaign, as the player's decisions will be impactful and lead to different outcomes, but the game is powered by Mankind Divided's Dawn engine. And the idea of Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy actually leaked well before the game came out, like to the point where it's like, oh yeah, we're finally hearing about this Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy game. It was first leaked in January 2017. Whoa. When Marvel Entertainment announced that it had partnered with Square Enix to produce various games based on Marvel properties. And journalists out there were like, yeah, I hear Guardians is one of these. So it's kind of there, but it would take until E3 2021 for it to be fully revealed. And 2017 was like when they were actually starting work on it. So it takes a while to make big AAA games like this, for sure.
Unless you're Game Freak.
Unless you are a Game Freak, yeah. Star-Lord was chosen as the game's lead character because, of course, he is the human heart of the Guardians and the member that Eidos Montreal most identify with. The team decided against adding multiplayer modes, like if you wanted to do co-op with all these Guardians. They felt that the Guardians, they're a group of colorful personalities, and by positioning Star-Lord at the heart of most social interactions, the player can better experience the dynamics of the team by having these unpredictable characters react to Star-Lord's choices. So while Star-Lord is the leader, other characters may disagree with this decision that he makes and make choices on their own based on that. And that was inspired by how most people work, negotiate, and bargain with each other in real life. The team also believed that this can further highlight the rest of the Guardians' personalities and characters. And yeah, it's surprising to think of which portrayals I like better or not as much than the MCU. Like, I really like this version of Gamora. And I think, for Peter Quill, it's a high bar to clear with how Chris Pratt embodied that role. But, this performance was also really good. Drax is really good. Groot is Groot. I think I still like Bradley Cooper's Rocket, but, that's my opinion there.
It's always super weird to me, like, that Rocket, that's just his voice now, like Bradley Cooper, because I assume, like me, your first experience with Rocket Raccoon was Marvel, where he has a very thick Cockney accent, Marvel vs. Capcom 3.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so when that movie came out and it was like, it's Bradley Cooper and he's just a dude, I like Bradley Cooper's performance. Like, I think he's really, really good as Rocket, but like, just such a weird whiplash of, so he's not like a Cockney dude. All right, cool.
Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy reviewed well for the most part on the powerful platforms, let's say. It got an 84 on Xbox Series X, an 80 on PlayStation 5, and a 78 on PC. Got a 58 on Switch, though.
Can't imagine why.
That's what happens when you have the cloud version.
I'm pretty sure this specific game, this and Kingdom Hearts were the reasons why NWR was like, we're probably just going to stop reviewing cloud versions.
It's probably for the best, honestly. I agree with that decision. The reviewers enjoyed the game's narrative, presentation, and characters, but there was some criticism for its combat. And yeah, I agree with that for sure. In February 2022, despite acknowledging strong reviews, Square Enix announced that the game's sales had, repeat it with me, failed to meet their expectations.
Oh, what a shock that Square would say that.
So then Square Enix sold its Western studios like Eidos Montreal to Embracer Group. Nom nom nom. It was nominated for 4 awards at the Game Awards, including Best Score and Music, and it won Best Narrative. It was nominated for 5 awards at the BAFTAs, including Audio Achievement and 3 Performance Honors, but it didn't win anything. And it won both Adventure Game of the Year and Outstanding Achievement in Story at the DICE Awards. It won the Ivor Novello Award for Best Original Video Game Score, and it won Best Soundtrack at the Steam Awards. It also just got nominated for next year's Grammy Awards, where they're having a category for the first time where it's Best Score Soundtrack for Video Games and Other Interactive Media. If you're wondering what else is nominated in a hodgepodge of games, it's Aliens Fireteam Elite with Austin Wintory's score, Call of Duty Vanguard with Bear McCreary's score, Old World, and Assassin's Creed Valhalla Dawn of Ragnarok. I mean, the expansion was pretty fun, but I didn't think the soundtrack was all that on that one. That's coming from a big Assassin's Creed fan. Anyway, what is the legacy of Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy? Well, especially with the selling off of Eidos Montreal to Embracer Group. Nom nom nom. It sounds like they're going to go back to Deus Ex, especially as they're working on Unreal Engine 5. This is a game that should have a sequel, but honestly, it probably won't. And, I guess I'm okay with that. But yeah, the story was really good, and the whole characters and the soundtrack. It's a really fun game. If you like those kind of narrative adventure games, like your Naughty Dogs, your God of Wars, give Guardians of the Galaxy a shot. The composer that we'll highlight this week, it's an interesting take and involvement in the game for sure, because we're going to talk about Steve Szczepkowski. And there's not a lot of info out there about Steve Szczepkowski. Like, most people may have a VGMDB profile. He does not. No idea when he was born, where he was born. He is not a Japanese composer, so we don't even know his blood type.
I was about to joke about blood type.
Right. But we do know he's currently the senior audio director at IDOS Montreal. Hopefully he stayed on through the transition, is working on his next big project there. He did play music and gigs with bands since he was about 16, though, and this will become relevant shortly as we discuss the development history of the soundtrack. But for now, you can follow Steve Szczepkowski on Twitter at ShepRock99, and that's ShepRock99. His discography, he started his career doing music composition and working as a sound designer, working on games like Bratz, Le Tour de France, 1903 to 2003 Centenary Edition, Cartoon Network Speedway, Fear Factor Unleashed, The Cat in the Hat, Winx Club, and Disney Cinderella Magical Dreams. But then when he began work as an audio director, he worked on VeggieTales, Larry Boy and the Bad Apple, Hannah Montana, Disney's Chicken Little, Ace in Action, Cartoon Network Racing, Code Lyoko.
Yo!
I know, I thought that would hit for you. And then he went to work at IDOS Montreal and work on the reboot of the Deus Ex franchise. So he would work on Human Revolution, The Fall, Mankind Divided, Go, and Breach. And then most recently, audio director for Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. He has also lent his voice in a couple different roles. So he was the English voice of Keiji Maeda and Magoichi Saika in Samurai Warriors 2. He provided additional voices in Winback 2, Project Poseidon.
There's a Winback 2. Wait, what?
Yeah, news to me.
What?
And he is the vocalist of the Star-Lord band in Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, because the soundtrack and music in this game is three-pronged, let's say. It's like a fork with three little prongs there. It's a threek. So there was the original score composed, arranged, and produced by Richard Jacques. And I know, what's this pronunciation? We've referred to him as Richard Jacques. We covered him on the show in episode 116 when he worked on Sonic R. Yeah, hearing different interviews with him, because he got some big press with this game and its soundtrack. Hearing people address him as Richard Jacques, and that's the British take on it as opposed to French. So we'll refer to him that way going forward. Richard Jacques, referring to this score in particular, he said that this project was over double anything I've ever done before in my career. And it sounded like a big project, not only in the amount of music to make, but also big for him personally, because Richard Jacques is a big Marvel fan. And he met Stan Lee through a mutual friend at a video game music concert in LA in 2005. And he jokingly said to him, "One day I'm going to do a Marvel soundtrack." Well, 12 years later, and with all the influence of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he got that call that he was signed on to the Guardians of the Galaxy project in 2017, and that dream came true. He still works a lot in MIDI. There's a neat video documentary about how this was all made, and he was saying how he has project files that are all MIDI that have just tons and tons of tracks, and these project files are over a gigabyte large. Like, that's no audio, that's all MIDI, ones and zeros there, and that's wild. He said that, quote, "One thing we did was to make sure we had seamless transitions. For example, you might be in a cutscene and a radio might be on in Peter Quill's bedroom. Then when we transition into the score, I would match everything. Same key, same tempo, and sometimes even a hint at the melody of the song that was previously playing." So that's some neat dedication and just really studying what can be done with interactive storytelling with games and how you bring in a dynamic soundtrack into that. So that's the first prong, is the orchestral score that's very inspired by Marvel and Marvel movies and the adventurous nature there. The second prong is this idea that, like, hey, what if Peter Quill, when he lived on Earth, he was this big fan of this 80s metal band called Star-Lord, and that's where he got the inspiration for his name. And so this is where audio director Steve Szczepkowski comes in, and he's like, okay, well, I guess maybe we come up with, some concept music of what this Star-Lord band would be like. And so he called up his friend Johan Boudreau, and they wrote a whole 10-song album as Star-Lord, this fictional, in-universe 80s metal band that Peter Quill loves and got his name inspiration from. And while Szczepkowski wrote the songs, he also sang the vocals, and this was meant to be as a placeholder for the demos on certain tracks, saying that, they'll just we'll hire someone else and that'll be fine and it'll be good that way. My tracks won't even, make the final cut.
A scratch track, I believe, is what those are called.
Yeah, there you go. And then Jean-Francois Dugas, who is the senior creative director, loved how it sounded, so there was no changing it. And so, in a way, there's this Star-Lord band, and even at the beginning of the game, like you're hearing the first track on the album, and don't worry, we'll get to it in our Critical 5 tracks. But the attention to detail was so that you're playing as Peter Quill, a young 13-year-old kid sitting in his bed in his room. You have the CD booklet opened up with all of the lyrics to all of the 10 songs printed out. And if you really wanted to, you could just sit and listen to the whole album, because it's one of those like press B to get up kind of moments. But you could just sit there and listen to all of the music that they did. And I think that's just incredible and a great attention to detail there. When he was asked whether we'll ever see a Star-Lord tour, Szczepkowski replied, "That would be a dream come true. Can we open for Kiss or the Foo Fighters? I'm a huge fan of both. Now I'm dreaming." So that's prong number 2. Prong number 3 is the bunches of licensed tracks that, Joe, you mentioned with streamer mode. You get to a moment where the Guardians have to huddle up and you kind of play a little mini game to get them motivated. And after that, a song from Peter Quill's Walkman plays, and it's a song from the 80s. Can either match perfectly, beautifully, or just not at all in a hilarious way. But yeah, there's a lot of 80s licensed tracks in this game, and the team actually got about 85% of them from their original dream roster of bands that they wanted to pull songs from. But it also helped to have Randy Eckhart on the team, and his creative licensing expertise stemmed from works on Guitar Hero, Dance Dance Revolution, and Crazy Taxi. So yeah, to have enough contact and experience to be able to pull all those strings and make all that work, absolutely. Does that, stay the same for a streamer mode where any one of those songs can be just played on Twitch? No, not really. Ultimately, the score was recorded at Abbey Road Studios, as Richard Jakes tends to do. I believe in his, when we talked about him for Sonic R, like he was one of the first composers to record there for a video game, and that was like in 2001. So experienced working there, although this was especially difficult to manage during the COVID-19 pandemic, as many elements were recorded remotely and had to have musicians in their own sort of private personal studios make sure that they were soundproofed and everything. It was a whole ordeal. In fact, Jakes worked on this project for about 9 months straight with only 4 days off. So in this documentary, it was kind of telling how you just kind of put everything to the side and put your head down, but the work is worth it. Let's talk about the 5 critical tracks from Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. And we'll start with a Star-Lord band song. This is the one. It is Zero to Hero.
Now that storm's coming for you, a price hanging on your head. If push comes to shove, we'll bring hell down from above. Tonight we ride straight into the fire. Are you ready to go, go, go? We'll make our stand. This is our time to go from zero to hero.
Bless my soul, Quill was on a roll.
No, that's a different Disney property. So this is the track that we highlighted when we brought Guardians of the Galaxy to the honorable mention table for the best of 2021. And yeah, it is written by Steve Szczepkowski and Johan Boudreau. And that is Szczepkowski on vocals there for the Star-Lord band. This is the first track off of that album that is played in the game through Peter Quill's young headphones. And wow, what a song to start things off. It really gets your attention. Like, you can stay and listen to some of the other ones, but like, this is the one you can't miss in the game. And I feel like that's why it's had to be here first here on the Critical Tracks. Apparently this was created last of all of the Star-Lord band songs. And what a one to really deliver and come through. For the lyrics, a sticking point for a while, but I guess, the breakthrough, I knew this day would come, had it kind of just lead into lyrics that really reflect, Peter Quill and the Guardians' path. And so neat little parallels there. What a cool song, though. I mean, definitely you can hear the Kiss influence and enjoy that for sure. But yeah, while you'll have the Marvel score that you'll hear from Richard Jacques, this is such a cool element that's thrown into you right at the beginning. And I just love this song.
Yeah, it's a neat song. Szczepkowski is killing it on those vocals. Absolutely. That is 80s vocals if I've ever heard them, and I barely have because I didn't grow up in the 80s. But yeah, no, this song is really cool. I do remember this being part of the best of 2021. So I do at least remember that. Yeah, no, this is a rad song.
We get into Richard Jacques' score for the rest of the Critical 5 here, and this starts with number 2 here. This is We Got This, Probably. It sure sounds like a Marvel hero theme. This is very early on the main soundtrack that was released for the game. I believe it plays in the tutorial boss fight that you have in the quarantine zone. And this segment of the clip here in particular is the Guardians of the Galaxy main hero theme. Richard Jacques talked about using about really 4 or 5 leitmotif themes for different characters, but this is certainly the main one. Bum 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 ba-da-dum. And that's just as heroic as it gets. So I feel like it just works super well for a Marvel action game, and nice that it's integrated kind of at the back half of this boss fight. We're doing this, we're winning, but you're also at the beginning of your adventure. So this kind of leitmotif will be used throughout the game to represent the Guardians.
I'm trying to think of what other non-Marvel movie this reminds me of. My brain wants to say Pirates of the Caribbean, but I don't think that's quite it. But it's good. I really, really like this score, and it does sound like a Marvel superhero theme, like through and through. Which, I mean, I'll be real, as much as I love the MCU, there's not a lot of like really memorable songs in those movies. But I could see myself remembering this one. This is pretty good.
Yeah, it definitely stood out after playing the game. Like, oh yeah, this is the Guardians' main theme, isn't it? So that was neat to hear. On the more emotional side of things, for the softer moments of the game, we get to number 3 on the Critical 5 to show the diversity and range. And this is Good People Never Really Die. when you have the idea of the promise being people confronted with their ideal versions of what they want to see and experience in the world, even though that is a fake representation, you gotta have some heart-to-hearts and some tough moments with people. And this definitely stood out as one of the emotional moments and themes in the game. And I just really like how delicately this is handled. There's another track called Moment of Truth, which is another more climactic moment, I think. But this was one that stood out to me when I was listening and really pulled back some of those memories. And remember listening in the game and feeling like, oh yeah, this track is, that's a nice one. So I feel like to show the variety, had to put this one here.
I mean, I assume this is a song when somebody dies, though who that could be, I don't know. I assume that based on the general tone of the song and on the title, Good People Never Really Die. But, yeah, no, this is, you can kind of really feel the emotion even without knowing the full context in this one, and I appreciate that a lot. This is very good.
I'll zip my lips and have no comment on that one. Track number 4 here on the Critical 5 for Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy picks the action back up, and this is Nowhere Under Fire. I feel like this continues the sort of vibe that you would want from a Marvel film, a cinematic adventure, but it's condensed here into this game. And of course, this takes place, if you're watching the video version, you're like, nowhere. Yes, it is Knowhere. So the place of nowhere, very important in the Guardians of the Galaxy universe. You get to meet Cosmo, which I feel like will be happening soon. Or was he in? I haven't seen the Christmas holiday special for Guardians of the Galaxy, so
I haven't seen it yet either.
So bear with me. I think he might be in that, but at the very least, I think he's coming up soon in the MCU. But yes, you get Cosmo in this game, and he's great. Of course, he has his base on Nowhere there, so an important location in this game as well, and especially as you're getting closer to the end of the game, some climactic moments happening here. But yeah, just more of the Marvel vibe, but just kind of emphasized with darker tones and bigger stakes, and it sounds great.
Doesn't Cosmo have like a cameo in Guardians 1, I think? He shows up in the collector's place.
Yeah, it's one of those, you gotta catch him in the background, yeah.
Yeah. But, I forgot Cosmo was in this game. This is a very, very, intense piece, considering it is involved with a dog in a spacesuit. Thanks, comics. Like, genuinely thanks. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and I love it. That's good. Cosmo's good. Yeah, I think this might be my favorite of the Critical 5, just because of the tone and the tension of it and everything. And, yeah, I really like it. Nowhere is the big skull, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
And we'll wrap things up with the credits theme for the game, number 5 here on the Critical 5. This is Gardeners of the Galaxy. Yes, on one of the high intelligence points of the universe, misspeaks your name as Gardeners of the Galaxy, and you try to correct them. Well, sometimes you just gotta run with it. And that's a cute little tongue-in-cheek reference there on the soundtrack for this credits theme that really brings back the main Guardians theme, but just with a different instrument set and bringing in that electric guitar. and it's a neat sound. I saw some people commenting on like, oh yeah, I got this in my gym playlist mix, bro. And it's like, oh, okay, I get it. It can pump you up, but I don't know if I'm necessarily putting a lot of video game music on that. Interesting. But this is just a neat theme that, just also what they do with this game and the credits, and there's a fake out there. It's just, people who've played it know what I'm talking about. Really cool song here, and that kind of brings back all of that.
Yeah, I've had video game music on workout playlists before. I don't know if this is one that I would put on one, just because it doesn't feel like it has the tone I look for when I'm looking for it. But this epic sound is great. The title is great. It kind of reminds me of, in the Ant-Man trailer, the "We love you, Spider-Man."
Yes.
It's just very good. This one, I think, sounds the most like what I remember from the movies. But again, the scores in the movies aren't the most memorable thing in the world. So maybe I'm just misremembering and my brain is autocorrecting or something. But this is what reminds me of the movies the most, this one.
Yeah, because the only thing I can remember from the original Guardians of the Galaxy is the theme where like they're all holding onto each other's hands with the Power Stone. It's the ba bum 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 ba da da bum bum bum. So like it's kind of similar melodic vibes there, but I think it does a good job of making this all its own. We kind of go off book a little bit for a couple tracks on the cutting room floor, and this first one comes from a separate album release, like 6 tracks that Richard Jacques just put out several months later, but an important track in the game nonetheless. This is The Huddle. So when the Guardians of the Galaxy huddle up, and you got to motivate them to fight, this piece of anthemic stadium rock comes in, and it's a short little loop. I mean, the track on this accessory album is only like 50 seconds long, but it's definitely something that calls back to the Guardians of the Galaxy theme. It's using the same chord progression, so that's neat. But yeah, you're getting like the vocal kind of chanting, the singing there, and that's a really neat way to kind of pump you up. Obviously, if players have played this game, you're going to hear this one a lot. I don't know if it's, key enough for a critical track, so at the very least, I think Cutting Room Floor is appropriate there.
This is the song that plays when the sci-fi sports teams walk into the stadium. That is literally all I can hear.
Yeah, that too. Or some of the recent Pokemon games when the crowd is singing along at the apex of a gym leader battle.
Yeah, I could hear that too. It just feels like this should be playing in a stadium. That's all I can think of.
The other track on the Cutting Room Floor, I don't need to say anything. Hit the music. Yes, one of the songs that you can get into after the huddle is indeed Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. Does it mesh well with the action that's happening on screen? It depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Maybe you get good or bad luck by getting this song and getting rickrolled and all while you play the game. But what other opportunity will we have to bring this song to the show? I feel like it's very fitting to at least have on the Cutting Room Floor.
No comment. I didn't know this was in this game. I can't believe it's in this game. All right. Yep. That's information that I have now in my brain.
So, what will I never forget about Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy? It was really a better story than I thought it was going to be going in. And so I was really impressed by the performances and the narrative that was told. And key moments, and I will always remember Zero to Hero as this Star-Lord band. The fact that they create an album as an 80s metal band because that happens to be something in universe, and the dedication that goes with it, but also, I mean, Richard Jacques' score that really is done from the love of a Marvel fan, and then all of these 80s songs. It's really a great collection of music coming together to amplify a video game experience where the combat's not the best, but I use that as a vessel to get to the next point in the story. And that's really what I want from a game, is to, have fun action, but then, lead to the next part in hopefully what is a good story. And I think that is Guardians of the Galaxy to a T. I would like there to be a sequel, but with what's going on with that studio, probably not.
One day I'll probably play it. Like you said, it's on Game Pass. The main thing holding me back is file size.
Oh, yeah.
AAA games are too big.
Yeah, you got to pick your battles there closely.
So, yeah, it's... I don't think it's as big a file size as Avengers.
No.
Also, I believe, hit Game Pass and was like 100 gigs.
Yeah, that's insane.
Like, AAA video games are too big. Learn more about file compression, please. I beg you.
I think this one may be around 40 or so. It's not too bad. All right. Well, interesting to theme these as 2021 games where the combat is the weakest part of the game and you get taunted by dreams and you shoot fire from your fists. You know what? They don't seem that similar, but maybe Demon Turf and Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy are better linked than we thought. So that will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at StringPixel. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you want. That's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. That's where Joe's other podcast, Smasher Pieces, is hosted. And you can find Smasher Pieces and Original Soundchat wherever you get your podcasts, on catchers all around the globe. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, even on Spotify, where we have a feed of episodes, but also a playlist of video game music, where if we talk about a track from a game on this show and it's on Spotify, it gets added to this big playlist. Joe, what's being added this week?
Both of these games are on Spotify, so they will both be added to the playlist.
You love to see it. And when you're done listening, you can find the show on social media at Soundchat OST. Leave some feedback for us. How are we doing with these episodes? Also, give us suggestions for games to cover in the future. All right, Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I will be talking about Wataru Yamaguchi.
And I will be talking about Masaru Tajima as we roll into the couple episodes left before the best of 2022. All right, to play us out, gotta give a shout out to another Star-Lord band song, because we usually cover a fan remix, a fan cover, but you're right, surprisingly not there for this one. I would have thought some band would have taken up to give their take on Zero to Hero, but that's just me. It's not there. So let's do another Star-Lord band song. And this one also caught my ears, like, oh yeah, I remember hearing this in the game. And this is called Watch Me Shine. Thank you for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.